All right, on this episode of Bare Knuckle Bowker, very excited to be talking to an individual who's going to be competing at BYB 31 Stockyard Brawl. And the rematch everyone's been waiting for, Julio Tanori going to be stepping into the octagon with Mark Irwin, and that BYB lightweight championship is on the line. And great getting to have Mark on Bare Knuckle Bowker. How's your day going so far, man?
Going good, my friend. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Yeah, and what's this road been like from the first fight to now? Because I feel like it's a fight that people have been understandably chomping at the bit for. Like, when did the dialogue really get ramped up to the point where you knew this was the next locked in fight for you?
Well, we started talking to the organization about the fight in June. Obviously, we took some time off after the first fight to recover from our injuries and then get back in the gym and get back to work. But we've been training for several months, and we're excited to get back out there and run it back.
Yeah, and just so much that stemmed from that first fight. Like, obviously, there's a lot to talk about with the upcoming fight, but just to, I guess, tell the full story, because I mean, it wasn't only the fight of the night when it transpired at BYB 22, but it also got into the Bare Knuckle Boxing Hall of Fame for the fight of the year, understandably so. I mean, that must have been quite the distinction. I mean, getting into the Hall of Fame and stuff like that. I mean, understandably, a lot of people hailing it as one of the great fights of the modern era of bare knuckle.
Yeah, the response from the fans was really incredible. To see how much it moved people and to see what an effect it had on the community. Yeah, one fight of the year for the Hall of Fame. It was my second year in a row winning an award from the Hall of Fame. It was my third award from the Hall of Fame, actually. Um, so it's a great honor. I came into this game because I felt like I could have a real dramatic impact on the sport, and having fights like this definitely cements my status as one of the all-time greats in the modern era of this sport, and I'm looking to continue with that and continue to add awards and titles and trophies to my trophy case, and that's the plan. We're going to go out here, we're going to get the win, and we're going to win that Police Gazette World Diamond Belt and add another championship title to our resume.
Yeah, and just even like derivative of the idea of making history, like when I mentioned being part of the Bare Knuckle Boxing Hall of Fame, and like you said, multiple times over, but that rich history that the Police Gazette Championship presents, I imagine that would be quite the feather in your cap if you're to get your desired outcome in this fight.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of not just combat sports, but also the history of combat sports. And the Police Gazette title is actually the original Combat Sports World Championship that belonged to the original Combat Sports World Champion, John L. Sullivan. So to be able to win that award would be, a historic and monumental feat. And I predicted at the onset of my BYB career that I was going to win the black BYB belt and the gold eagle plated Police Gazette diamond belt. And I have that black BYB belt in my trophy case, and I have every intention of finishing this thing and adding that Police Gazette World Diamond Belt to my collection and the new.
Yeah, and that's such a cool thing that BYB has established, just with like the Police Gazette now being like that official championship, and just I guess relatively shortly coming off of that LT Nelson versus Barry Jones fight. I feel like LT Nelson had a very similar sentiment about it, just like kind of what you said, the historical significance of a belt that dates back to like the late 1800s. I mean, incredible stuff.
Right. And, it's an honor, too, to be on this journey and on this path with my friend and bare knuckle brother, Laurent LT Smash Nelson. We made our debuts in the Trigon together at BYB X. We both had dominant knockout wins. Mine was the Knockout of the Year award, and he had a bit knockout over Rico Franco, who's one of the best world champion bare knuckle fighters on the planet. And since then, we've been traveling the country, fighting at different events, supporting each other and going to the Hall of Fame every summer. It's been a great honor to be on this path with LT, and I can't wait to follow in his footsteps as the second uh, Police Gazette World Champion for BYB.
Yeah, and I imagine that there is a certain level of, I guess, momentum and motivation heading into this year. I mean, there always is, but I guess just even on the heels of becoming the inaugural BYB lightweight champion. And even with that Josh Oxendine fight where you cemented yourself as the champion, I felt like a lot of people were even talking about that fight as a contender for, fight of the year, and then kind of one upped yourself there with the Tanori fight. And now you have the chance to, I guess, like tie up that series there and whatnot. Just seems like there's like a certain level of momentum and a lot of cool factors coming together leading into this one for you.
Absolutely. I feel like, I made this prediction a long time ago that I was going to be here. So to be at this point, um, I can't say I'm surprised. It was my expectation. It was my plan all along. And I'm excited to be at this point in this, in my journey. And I have the utmost confidence that I'm going to go out there. I'm going to finish this thing just like I said I would.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the interesting case with your first fight 'cause it was such an all-out war from bell to bell, but you see this one ending inside the distance the second time out.
I do. I think that I did enough to win the first fight, in my opinion. Obviously, I'm biased. However, we'll make some adjustments based on things that we learned in the first fight. And I am confident that those changes that we've been working on in the gym are going to pay big dividends. And I will get the finish, and I will get that belt wrapped around my waist on September 21st.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems like you're surrounding yourself with some of the, very best in multiple combat sports, really, from what I can tell. Because in the last little while, I've seen you getting in work with guys like, Marcus Edwards, for instance, and just also seeing you out there over at Genesis working with people like Brandon Gertz and Grant Neal, Rose Namajunas. I mean, it seems like there's just such like a wealth of people that you have at your disposal to, grow in your skill set. And I mean, Marlon Cheeto Vera, I mean, the list goes on, it seems, right?
Yeah, I'm very blessed in that respect. I've been fortunate enough that I've been able to work with and train with and be coached by some of the greatest fighters on the planet in boxing, MMA, and bare knuckle. At home in California, I'm a regular training partner of Cub Swanson and his Bloodlines team. They've been a great asset and great training partners to me. So shout out to all of them. You mentioned Cheeto Vera, who I've sparred with quite a bit over the years. And now I'm currently out here in Denver in order to get acclimated with the climate in the lead up to the fight. And I am finishing my training camp here at Genesis Fight Team. They've been absolutely great. They have arguably one of the best bare knuckle teams in the world, like several of the fighters that you mentioned. And, it's really deep waters over there, but I'm blessed to be surrounded by so much talent, and that gym has really rallied behind me. And I'm excited to have Coach Jake in my corner and be a part of that Genesis fight team that has 3 bare knuckle world championships fights coming up within the next month.
Yeah, and I mean, heading back into, that higher altitude this time out, like, was that something you did prior to the first fight, which was also in Denver, just kind of getting acclimated beforehand? Or was that even like a takeaway from the first fight that will differentiate what you did from the first fight to this sequel here? I guess I'm curious on that end of things.
Yeah, so this is my second training camp out here in Denver, Colorado. For the first fight, we got out here about 3.5 weeks in advance of the fight, and I trained at a pound for pound Muay Thai, which is another great combat sports gym. So shout out to them. But for this training camp, we got it a couple days earlier to give myself a full 4 weeks of preparation and training in a gym that has a bare knuckle team and coaches that are allocated specifically for the sport and the rule set. I think definitely will be a big advantage for me in my preparation for this fight.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. Just shows the methodical kind of approach you always seem to have. And that's kind of why it's exciting to, watch your different fights, because as much as there's the excitement component that I've, justifiably mentioned a couple times during our chat, it always seems like there's that ever growing fight IQ that you have, which you seem to have individually, but probably also helps, having the guidance of someone like Ian McCall, for instance, as well.
Absolutely. Shout out to my big bro, Ian McCall. Yeah, being able to learn from world champions and being able to draw upon their experience is invaluable. And it's certainly been a great asset to me. So I'm very fortunate for all of the great fighters, coaches, and training partners that I'm surrounded by. And all of my success and ability is a great deal of it is a function of that. So shout out to them. And I can't wait to go out there and make them proud and win another world title.
Yeah, no, incredible stuff, man, for sure. And it just seems like there's a good level of support coming from all different areas. Like, even from what I was seeing on social media, it seemed like you were getting a little bit of love from Ryan Reber, who's going to be contending for his own 135-pound title in bare knuckle relatively soon as of this recording. So just kind of cool to see stuff like that also.
Yeah, Reber is a friend of mine. Shout out to Royal Ryan Reber, who's going to be fighting for the BKFC 135-pound title 1 week before mine. He's been a friend. We've been supporting each other's careers, pretty much the whole way. So it's really cool that we get to go back to back one weekend to the next, fighting for the world titles in our respective organizations. It couldn't be more perfect, honestly.
And it seemed like the first fight you had with Tanori, I mean, it got a lot of excitement going from people who are, hardcore bare knuckle fans for sure. But it also seemed to drum up a certain level of outside attention. Like, it seemed like Stephen A. Smith was talking a fair bit about all of that. Like, what were your thoughts on, I guess, just his thoughts on everything, just with like the hematoma in the fight and things of that nature?
Yeah, the response from the media was wild. It was on the Stephen A. Smith show, Barstool Sports, Men's Journal, Outlook. It was the top trending story on all the major MMA websites for an entire week. I had people sending me newspapers from Eastern Europe and Brazil, in Portuguese with pictures of my swollen head on the cover. It got me a blue check mark on Instagram. So, it's pretty crazy the amount of response that it got from the fans. And, I was really blown away. It means a lot to me, to be appreciated like that. I put everything I have into this, my blood, sweat, and tears. I put my life on the line. A lot of guys talk about that, but not a lot of guys walk that walk. And, I don't have to tell you what kind of fighter I am, because I go out there and I wear my heart on my sleeve. I prove it every time I step into that Trigon. And so to get the love from the fans like that and the appreciation, it means a lot. Now we need to finish this thing and get that title.
Yeah, and I'm trying to recall where I saw this because I think anecdotally it might have been something I saw on one of the bare knuckle groups, and someone was talking about just maybe some crossovers between BYB and BKFC, and you were talking about how you've gotten to compete in both spaces. Like, you're someone who has a lot of insights in that regard, and you're just like talking up the Trigon in a big way. Like, man, this is like a thing that really forces the fight. It's such like a compact space, and you really have to, I guess, just like force that issue in a certain sense. Like, you can still, just through being creative and having that ingenuity, show fight IQ in that relative sense. But I remember when we were talking ahead of the Oxendine fight, you were talking about how much the BKFC space can kind of allow for people to, I guess, like circle around and have that lateral movement, whereas almost like, BYB Extreme is almost like a different permutation of the sport in a certain sense, just in terms of what it kind of like draws out of the fighters, large in part, it seems like.
Sure, by changing the ring, it definitely changes the fight. The BKFC ring being a large circle allows for a lot of lateral movement and actually makes it pretty tough to trap people against the ropes because there are no corners. However, keep in mind with the BKFC ring, the ropes are not actually ropes, as that would be impossible because it's a circle. What they actually are is steel beams that are padded. So when you run into the wall of the BKFC squared circle, it's like running into a brick wall. The BYB ring being the smallest combat sports surface, obviously it's not very good for side to side movement or fighting off the back foot. You really have to come forward and force the fight. And if you get stuck in a corner because it's 60 degrees and not 90, it could be a lot tougher to get yourself out of that tight space. Those are all things that you take into account heading into the fight as far as, styles, strategies, and techniques.
And it's just interesting because you're obviously continuing to carve out your legacy in this sport, but it seems like you're even inspiring certain people to, kind of make their run at it. Like I was talking to Drew Stuvo a little bit ago, and he is just coming off of another win in bare knuckle and an exciting performance in his own right. And when I was speaking to him before the fight, we were kind of referencing some work that he got in with you at Bobby's Boxing. I think it was fall of last year that transpired. And I think he wasn't even like expressly looking at bare knuckle at the time, but it seemed like as we were kind of talking about that, he maybe drew a certain source of like motivation from like what you were able to do and continue to do in the sport too. So that must be kind of cool also.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to get a couple sparring sessions in with Drew Stuvo when he was in Southern California last year, and we became instant friends. So to see him having the amount of success that he's been having in bare knuckle, getting big knockout wins, and headlining a card in his hometown, couldn't be happier for my friends. So shout out to Drew Stuvo. Shout out to Ruben War, also, who another friend and training partner of mine that I've met along my travels here in the bare knuckle sport. He had a big 6-second knockout win as well in his main event for BKFC not too long ago. So yeah, to be able to see people climbing the mountain, alongside me, it definitely is inspiring and motivating. And I'm happy for my friends. And now it's my turn. I get to go out there and do my thing.
Yeah, no, I just love seeing that, just everyone elevating each other's respective level and stuff like that. And I mean, like you said, clearly showing in all of the performances you guys have been able to generate, right?
Yeah, well, iron sharpens iron, as does one man's strength in another. And by training with the best in the world, it has a certain rub effect. It rubs off on you. And that's why I've always made a point to surround myself with the best fighters and the best coaches that I possibly can, because, winning is contagious, and being able to learn from the best, I'm able to take some of that and, run with it.
And I guess kind of going back to the fact that you were calling for a stoppage in this fight, like, is that something that is, I guess, informed by a certain confidence in your preparations heading into this particular fight? Or is it more of like what we were talking about before, where you can be very analytical and cerebral about things, whereby maybe you took something from that first fight with Julio Tanori, where you're like, okay, I can see a certain sequence or build up to a certain spot where I can get that stoppage. Like, was there something gleaned from the first fight that's informing that, or is it more of just something that's, I guess, informed by the confidence and the preparations leading into this next one more so?
It's really both. Obviously, you learn a lot when you go the distance in a world championship fight with somebody. To my knowledge, that was the longest fight in the history of the modern era. We're doing 3-minute rounds instead of two, like some of the other organizations. And we're doing 6 rounds instead of 5. So that essentially is double the length of a fight. That's an 18-minute bare knuckle fight as opposed to a 10-minute bare knuckle fight. So I spent a lot of time in there with him, and I certainly learned a lot about him. And then, of course, I've had the best training camp of my entire career, honestly. The weight cut's going great. I'm surrounded by some of the best bare knuckle fighters in the world every single day that are helping push me to be my best. And I can't wait to go out there and show all the hard work that we've put in and the changes that we've made.
Yeah, no, it's cool and everything like that. Just seems like you're in a really, good spot, all things considered, man. And I mean, yeah, I guess it really did pan out in a certain way too, just with this being like the first go around in bare knuckle of the calendar year, but at the same time, the biggest way you could possibly return back to the sport. So it seemed like things kind of panned out. Like it seemed like you, I guess, kind of trusted the process and things kind of falling into place for this sequel, being in alignment and everything this year.
Yeah, and I think that I've been very fortunate in that respect. I've trusted the process, and I've believed in myself and the work that I've put in. I've always been one to make bold predictions, and I've backed a lot of them up. And I'm excited to have the opportunity to go out there and do it once more.
Yeah, and we'd kind of referenced it before. I mean, so many awards you've captured in your tenure in bare knuckle. I mean, that BYB knockout of the year in 2022, and then getting in the bare knuckle boxing Hall of Fame in 2023 with not just the fight of the year, but also, the Spirit Award as well, and then the Laverne Chatteron Sportsmanship Award for 2024. I mean, yeah, just so many accolades. Like, what do you I guess see as the next award you're going to be garnering? I mean, it seems like the broader track record might inform the idea that this next fight could generate you some sort of award or induction distinction.
Yeah, to my knowledge, I'm the most award-winning fighter in BYB history. I've won more awards than I've had fights, and I think this will be no different. I would expect comeback of the year and fighter of the year and knockout of the year.
Yeah, and I feel like I've talked to different fighters about this too, because BYB has always had like a great pool of talent. And they're always bringing in great combatants for sure, but just also like acquiring BKB a little earlier this year. I mean, I feel like that's been an exciting thing too. I feel like it just deepens the overall talent pool that much more. Is that a sentiment that you also share as well?
Absolutely. BKB was the first of the major organizations in the Western Hemisphere. They've been putting on shows since 2015, if I'm not mistaken. They have a great roster of very seasoned and experienced bare knuckle fighters. So for BYB to acquire that roster, yeah, it's a huge move for the organization. You see the production value going up in every show. The roster is very deep at this point. You see a lot of guys coming over from BKFC now to BYB. I don't want to take too much credit, but I feel like I was one of the first people to show that you could come over to BYB and be a big star in the sport and get a lot of views and attention in big fights. And, now in the last year or so, you see a lot of big names, especially at 135 pounds and around my division, coming over to BYB. So it's an exciting time to be a part of the sport and a part of the organization as it's growing and flourishing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you're a shining example of that, as you said. And then also with like certain fighters too, just kind of coming to mind off the top of my head, like Helen Peralta and Gustavo Trujillo, like two people who very much have strong claims for being the very best in all of bare knuckle in their respective divisions. So yeah, great stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Jared Kid Gaddy Grant, former BKFC world champion, just came over, has had a couple big performances, right, at 135 pounds. So you're seeing the talent pool is getting very deep. And like I said, it's exciting for the sport, it's exciting for the organization, and it's exciting for the fans.
Yeah, and something that I think doesn't really get talked about enough because I mean we were referencing some of the differences that can exist between, BKFC and BYB through you discussing your anecdotal experiences with both, but as much as it really deepens the talent pool having BKB on board, like I just have so much respect for people who I guess have crossed over historically between those two promotions because in so many ways it's like a different kind of game just with BKB not having that active clinch part of the rule set and then having the day of weigh-ins versus the day before weigh-ins. It's almost like as much as it's still bare knuckle, there's a lot of adaptations one would have to make to cross over. So a lot of respect for anyone who's ever made that jump in the past and people who are looking to do that in the future too.
Yeah, certainly there's a bit of an adjustment for some of the European fighters because the rule set was a little bit different. But ultimately, I think that it's good to see more of a uniformal rule set. Obviously, there's still some minor differences between BYB and BKFC, like we discussed before. Uh, but they do have a standardized rule set that has been adopted by the athletic commissions. And that's why you're seeing it spread to so many states now. And probably within the next year or two, you should see bare knuckle being sanctioned pretty much across all of the United States and around the globe. So, it's the fastest growing sport in the world, and it's an honor to be a part of, this first generation of bare knuckle fighters.
Yeah, I feel like you're on the same wavelength as me because I feel like having that more, I guess, like ubiquitous kind of approach to bare knuckle, I feel like it informs the idea that it's going to get regulated in more and more states, even though it's been, growing at such a rapid rate. You've already done such great things in the sport. Is there like any particular area that you would like to see the sport encroach into? Like any, I guess, market that you've ever been particularly fascinated in competing in at some point?
Yeah, well, you've seen BKFC has put on a couple events in the state of California this year, Knucklemania 4, which I was in attendance of, and also they put on an event in Temecula. So I'd love to fight in my home state of Southern California, and I would love to fight in the fight capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. Those would be probably two of my top picks if it were up to me. And I think it's only a matter of time before Vegas adopts the bare knuckle rule set. And like I said, you see it all across the United States.
Yeah, I was gonna say I feel like a Tanori rubber match might be the, big fight for like a Nevada or a California show. I feel like they'd really want to come out with like a blockbuster action guaranteed kind of fight that has high stakes to it in either of those markets if they were to go there.
Yeah, well, obviously, myself being from Huntington Beach, California, and Tenori taking up residency in Long Beach, California, I think a fight in Los Angeles or Orange County or anywhere really in Southern California would be massive. Would definitely have a very boisterous crowd, on both parties, and would be, a hell of a fight. But first things first, we got to get the knockout September 21st. That's the plan and the new.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just kind of letting my excitement run away with it a little bit. We've already got this immediate fight to look forward to. I'm getting a little greedy, kind of prognosticating things loosely and kind of looking towards the future. And obviously, no slight towards Tenori there in saying that, was more just kind of expressing like they would want to bring a big fight from BYB Extreme to either of those markets. But super excited they were able to, lock this fight in. Man, should be a great throwdown towards the end of the month here. And I really do appreciate you rather making some time to, come on the show and talk a little bit about this fight coming up. But I also want to be mindful of what you're getting up to as well, Mark. So I figured I'd give you the floor in case there was a final parting thought you wanted to add as we're kind of, wrapping things up here, man. I do appreciate you making some time.
Yeah, I guess I'll finish on this. Obviously I fight for history and legacy. I'm fighting for the world championship, but also I'm fighting for something bigger than me. My head coach, Ian McCall, is the CEO of a nonprofit research organization called Athletes Journey Home. You can find more information about us at athletesjourneyhome.org. We are attempting to cure brain damage and PTSD caused by traumatic brain injuries using psychedelics. We have all the latest scientific tools at our disposal. We simply need the funding in order to conduct the research. Our plan is to take about 10 fighters into the jungles of Peru and perform a traditional ayahuasca ceremony. And then obviously brain scans, gut biome before and after, all the clinical data needed to show proof that these medicines can help reverse the effects of brain damage and the side effects of that as well. So I'm fighting for that cause to raise awareness and funds for the organization so that we can help fighters and athletes and anybody who's suffered a traumatic brain injury. I think there's something ironic but also poetic and romantic about the fact that I'm going to have to give and receive some brain damage in order to raise awareness for curing it. But I wanted to take a second to shed some light on the Athletes Journey Home Foundation. So please check the website, donate, and stay tuned. BYB 31, September 21st. It's going to be a hell of a fucking fight. Mark the Shark is going to be a two-time world champion.
No, I love seeing that, man. I mean, it kind of ties into the Drew Stuvo shout out that I tied in earlier because I also interviewed his last opponent, Sonny Smith, and he's doing a similar thing, like just really, I guess, advocating for the therapeutic benefits that come from that kind of like psychedelic use and I guess just like subverting a lot of traumas and really significant issues and stuff like that. So Yeah, just incredible stuff, man. Where again did you say people could go to check that out? I figured probably bears repeating to get another shout out there. I think it's an admirable effort when you guys kind of use your platform in that way, because I also believe in the, therapeutic benefits of psychoactives and those kind of psychedelic kind of components and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the athletesjourneyhome.org. You could also find us on social media on Instagram at Athletes Journey Home. Yeah, appreciate the support, my friend. It was great chatting with you again. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate all the support, and I can't wait to put on another tremendous performance for you and all the fans.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for coming on, Bare Knuckle Bowker, man. I'm really excited for BYB 31. This is going to be a great sequel against Julio Tanori. I think anyone that actively follows the sport recognizes that this is one of the very biggest fights you can do. And I mean, guaranteed action with both of you guys. So certainly stoked to check that out on September the 21st, man. But until then, you have a good rest of your night. And yeah, thanks so much, man.
Thanks, brother. Cheers.